Hello, happy Friday, and welcome back to our latest edition of Authors on iTours. I'm Lauren Carr, and today we are having lunch with Carl Buccellato. I hope I'm saying that name correct. He is the author of To Every Page a Turning, One Life's Journey. And we're going to talk to him about this fictionalized kind of autobiography. Carl Buccellato was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1942, and he is of Italian-American descent, as you can tell by his name. Now, throughout his career and travels, Carl has met a broad array of different people, some down on their luck, some at the top, the pinnacle of their success in their careers and their personal lives. Many of the people and their stories have left a mark on Carl's heart and mind, which has inspired many of the stories in his novel. And today, Carl resides in Coral Springs, Florida, with his wife, Mary Ellen. She is an award-winning multimedia artist and speaker. Together, Carl and Mary Ellen love traveling the globe and looking for new inspiration for their gifts and their talents given to them by their love of God. And we have some fascinating stories to talk to Carl about today, some from his novel. And so let's bring in Carl. Hello, Carl.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, or lunchtime.
Brown bag.
Story, a conversation. I was saying, well, we should have gone live 15 minutes ago when we started talking, because just for those of you, I do a system test about 15 minutes before we go live. And I said, okay, so now we're not going to have anything to talk about. but
I always have things to talk about.
Show everyone your book that you have, To Every Page, One Life's Journey. And tell us about the title of that book. Why is it One Life's Journey to Every Page a Turning? And how you actually came about writing. Now, this is a novel, but in many ways, it's an autobiography.
Yes, it is. In the beginning of the book, I describe how one morning I was sitting out on my veranda with my wife, Mary Ellen, and we were having coffee. And we sit out there every morning and we do our devotions together and we give thanks for the blessings we have. And so she said to me, well, what's on your honey-do list today? Which is usually her way of saying, are you going to do anything today? Sit around and watch TV. So I said, okay, my honey-do list. So I went into the garage and I was cleaning out some cabinets to make room for tax papers. And in there I found a folder that had moved from house to house for years and years and years, a huge folder bound together with a big green rubber band. And I knew immediately what it was. I remembered it because for almost 50 years of my life, I journaled and took notes of events that happened to me and emotions that I experienced throughout the day and the life experiences over those 50 years. And they were necessary for me because I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. My father was an alcoholic and left me with some traumas as a young boy as I grew up and issues that made me not a happy young man. I was an angry young man. And so I needed a program or a source to help me purge out and find a catharsis for some of those inner feelings that I had, which I would not share with anyone else. It was embarrassing and I was reluctant to be that transparent. So I went through this ACOA program and it taught me how to write and subscribe and make notes of your feelings and emotions, not only the event, but how do you feel when this is going on? What's happening inside of you? And so I had this collection of work and I shared some of it with Mary Ellen and she said, this is very good stuff. It could help some other people. You might want to think about putting it together into a novel. And so we collected it down. Obviously, there was so much work in 50 years worth of work. It could have been the Encyclopedia Britannica. So I wasn't about to take on an exercise like that. So we reduced it down to a novel. And I included in there stories that I thought would be relevant and have an interest to the reader. And the reason that I structured the book the way I did, you will note when you read the book, it says, One Life's Journey. I do not, in the book, intentionally, I do not name the protagonist. While much of it is after my life, that is true, I believe that my generation, people who were the war babies born in the 1940s, followed by the baby boomers who were born in the 50s and 60s, there are 17 million war babies still alive in America, and 75 million baby boomers. And almost all of these people went through similar experiences that I did. Maybe not exactly the same. Maybe, maybe the issues weren't detailed the way I detail it in the book. Maybe some people didn't go to war. Maybe some people didn't have the experience with an alcoholic parent, or maybe they were fortunate and they didn't have an addicted child. I had all of that, and so I had to describe it in a book in such a way that people could relate to. And as a result of this, so many people have told me after reading this book, this could have been my story. You were writing about me. I didn't identify anybody's name, so it was easy for them to put their own name into the character and follow it throughout a lifespan and the paradigm shifts of the 20th century. So I
you're
think
actually writing about an era. One life journey through this era that we've gone through, that we're going through.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. I mean, when you think about everything that's going on in the United States today, it seems so traumatic and so unusual. But we've been through these things before. We've gone through the flower children. We've gone through the peaceniks. We've gone through the various sides of the Vietnam War, the hawks and the doves, and we've had a country split apart by politics and different agendas for the last 50 years. And it survived. Our country survived because it has more of a foundation than just the surface. We're a very strong country, built of a lot of strong people.
With a strong foundation. We're not built on sand.
No,
about that just last night.
And for me, it was very important for me to put into the book how my life's journey brought me to an understanding of God in my life, and that strengthened me to overcome. I could overcome anything, and if I really went into the depth of the things I've been shot, I've been stabbed, I've been in airplane crashes. I was telling you earlier, I've had a hemorrhagic stroke where the left side of my brain exploded, and here I am. I'm alive. People say you're not supposed to live through those things, but I'm here and I'm talking to you. I'm 79 years old. I can communicate. I can write. I can live a fulfilled life, and hopefully, I can still contribute something to somebody else's life. And that's why I said here, to every page you're turning, our lives are like a book. Everything that we experience is one page after the next. And when we look back on it, we realize there's a rhythm to it. There's a flow to it. And it's all there. It's all there in a sense to teach us something. If we're open enough to learn, we can be much better than we were before. And we have to be open.
Witness so much, like as a matter of fact, you have one chapter in there that you witnessed the Berlin Wall coming down.
Yes, I did. I happened to be in Germany on a trade group. I was part of the National Foundation of Independent Business, and I was one of the Council of 100 that was selected, businessmen that was selected to represent business to the government. And I was an advisor to 3 different presidents, to Reagan, Papa Trump, and Clinton in his first term. And we would advise on real estate and other economic things and trade and so forth. And every once in a while, they'd send us on trade missions to, different countries and different cities to arrange relationships, because while politicians do a great job, business people who come face to face bond and they build quasi friendships, and things work better that way. They always work better that way.
Yeah.
So I was in Germany, and a good friend of mine from the war years was in Germany as well. He was still in military service, and he was stationed with the intelligence committee in Berlin. And this when the Berlin Wall was still up. And we had arranged where he would have me have access to a transport that left to fly into Berlin, and I'd be able to see West Berlin. Well, we no sooner got in the plane and the plane was rumbling to take off, we heard over the intercom, there's trouble in Berlin. Something's going on in Berlin. And we didn't quite know what it was yet. And as we flew, it was like an hour and 20-minute flight to Berlin. And as you're flying and coming into Berlin, you could see from the plane, we could see down in the street thousands of people gathering. And they seemed to be migrating like the big herds of buffalo, that you see on the Serengeti. And they were
people, they would look like the buffalo. Okay.
Yeah, there were the herds of them. And they were moving east. But that's the communist zone. So when just as we were landing, they said, the wall is coming down. They're tearing the wall down. Now, we knew it wasn't the communists that were tearing the wall down. It was the people tearing the wall down. So we landed. We were able to get in a truck, and they took us closer into Berlin. It took us actually just close to 2 hours to work our way through the crowds to the Brandenburg Gate and through over to where the wall was. And there were tens of thousands of people banging on the wall with everything from small hammers to big shovels, and just banging to create a hole in the wall. And I was there surrounded by people. As people came storming through the wall, the holes opened up, and people who were in the East Berlin side began to pressure through. And none of the soldiers shot at them. As a matter of fact, some of the soldiers dropped their weapons and came through also. People kissed the ground. People were able to touch and hug their family that they had not been able to be in contact with for many, many years, for generations. They couldn't connect with each other. And there they were embracing. And it was like being, to me, it was like being in a New Year's Eve and a birthing party all at one time, because I didn't know any of these people. And yet I felt connected to them the way you would connect to mankind, because this was humanity saying, we will not be repressed. We will not be put under. And these people, it was just the most gratifying thing I've ever seen in my life. And I brought a piece to show you today. This is an actual piece of Soviet concrete that I picked up that day, and I've had in my possession ever since. And it's a piece of the Berlin Wall. It's not one of the souvenirs that they sell you in the store that says it is and it probably isn't. This actually was a piece of the Berlin Wall. And we were part of crowds of people that sang together and drank too much all night long. It was incredible. The sun came up, there was still partying. That's my experience with
and then to say that you were actually there, you weren't even planning for the wall to come down when you went there to see it.
No one expected it to. No one, it was under communist control, and it was in 1989. It was November 1989, and it was one of the first precursors of the fall of the Soviet Union, because first there was Poland with serendipity, and then there was the Berlin Wall, and then soon afterwards, Mr. Gorbachev tore down the wall, and then and it was a life-changing experience to look in the faces of these people, the young and the old, to see the tears and the joy and the unbelievable gratitude. I mean, I had the good pleasure. I was invited to teach a course on American entrepreneurialism for a month in Moscow after the fall of the Soviet Union. So I was there in 1991, and I had the good fortune, in spite of the fact that they had guards following me everywhere. They kept telling me it was for my own safety, but those people were never going to hurt me. There was nothing. I'd go into the square at night after teaching at the university and heading back to the gigantic hotel they put me in, and there were people there with crosses and candles and singing and kneeling and praying publicly, which they hadn't been able to do since the revolution. They hadn't been able to praise their God since the revolution. And when you look at the joy on their faces, you can't repress people. You can't. And this section here says, to every page you're turning, it's really from the scripture Ecclesiastes that says, for every for everything a season. There's a time to live and a time to die, a time for war and a time for peace. That's what this is about, because our lives are like that page. For every day there's a season. So I'm rambling on.
Now, yeah, and and God and Christianity does weave through the story very much so, because he plays such a big role in your life. Now, was God a big part of your life when you were a child? Because you did work through a lot of adversity.
Yes.
You were born in Brooklyn, New York. As a matter of fact, you mentioned, that at one point you belonged to what's it called, a gang back then?
Everybody belonged to a street gang in those days.
They belonged to a street.
I grew up in Brooklyn, and it was a blue-collar neighborhood, and it was a tough neighborhood, and everybody had to earn their way on the streets, and there were a lot of adults there that were more than a gang. They were the mob.
Yeah. And, you don't belong to the mob. you didn't belong to the mob.
No, that wasn't for me. That wasn't for me. My grandfather, who I'm named after, was born and raised in Castellamare del Golfo in Sicily, which was the origin of the mafia in Sicily. And he came from a family that was very strongly steeped in that tradition. And his family and an adjoining family had a vendetta that went on for years, and people were killed on both sides. And when he was 15 years old, came across two men from the opposition trying to assault his sister. And they had made the mistake of putting their shotguns down. And he defended his sister. And as a result of that, they had to take him out of Sicily and spirit him to America, because he would have been killed. He would have been killed. So when I was growing up, my grandfather, who I was the apple of his eye because I'm the first of the grandchildren, and I was named after him in the tradition, the Sicilian tradition, he always told me, don't trust those people. They're the devil. You don't want to be part of those people. You want to live a whole life. You want to live a good life. You don't want to be part of those people. And his words stuck with me. But as a kid on the streets in Brooklyn, there was always things going on, borderline this, people were stealing hubcaps to sell them back to the owner. They were all kinds of, in those days, they used to have what's called a numbers business, where you would bet on the pari-mutuel, 3 numbers of the pari-mutuel for the local racetrack that was printed in the newspaper. And you can bet anywhere from a dime to $25, and you can bet it straight or a combination. And they give you a little slip, a number slip, and they'd have a matching slip to that would go to the bookies, And so when you were a kid on the street, you made a few dollars running the slips from point A to point B, because if the bookie got caught by the cops with it, he'd have to pay an extra boost to the cops. But if the kids got caught, they just give you a slap on the back of the head and let you that's the way it was.
But you got accepted to art school, which kind of went against the leather jackets with the eagles on the back.
It went directly against it. I always loved to paint, and I was fairly good at it. And I did want to pursue it, and I kept getting a lot of feedback from my father and from the friends that I had in the street, and they were ridiculing it. And, I guess I wasn't strong enough in my own sense at that point to stand up to them, because I never did it. I didn't go. I was accepted, however, but I didn't go. And years later, of course, I took it up again, and I began painting again. And I'm married to a woman who is the most extraordinary artist in the world. She's fantastic. But that was a small part of my life, and I did want to do it. Instead, I was a boxer when I was a kid, and I did a lot of scuffing, and I had 36 amateur fights, and I won 34 of them. And I, as a matter of fact, when I was 15 years old, I went in my second round in what's called the Golden Gloves. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. but it's a championship for amateur fighters. And I won the light heavyweight division for New York.
Mhm.
This big kid did it. 15 years old, but I was, by the time I was 13 years old, I was 6 foot tall and 185 pounds. So I was no skinny little kid that could be pushed around.
Kid, yeah.
I was a big kid. And so it was an outlet for me. And frankly, it was a way to overcome some of the inner rage that I had not been purged out yet, because I hadn't gone into these kinds of groups yet and learned how to do it. It would just build inside of me, and I would strike out. And I was an angry young kid. I was an angry kid. I didn't, I was being an Italian American living in Brooklyn. I was a Catholic, and so I went to Mass on Sunday, and I did all the things that you were supposed to do as a Catholic kid. But I didn't really understand it yet. I didn't know about it yet. Later on in my life, I understood the difference between just going through the motions and really having a relationship with your God. It's a whole different thing. And so I was.
So you ended up because you were on the streets and seeing what your friends were doing, and I guess it was probably the influence of your grandfather too, saying that you didn't want to get mixed up with that. Because you say in the book that a lot of your friends that they either died or they got hooked on drugs or they ended up in jail.
Yeah.
So that was how you ended up signing up and going into the military, was to escape the path that everybody else took.
That's right. It taught me a whole different discipline, a whole different respect for life, because even though I was trained to be a warrior, you experience things that you have to have a respect for life. You survive. You do what's necessary to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But it leaves scars in you as well. And so afterwards, I spent many years with veterans groups and different types of people, and it helped me again to progress and to go over some of these issues and purge some of these issues. There is a chapter in the book that I write about when I went to the Vietnam Wall and walking along the wall and seeing the names of people that I knew, and there, but for the grace of God, I'd be on the wall instead of walking in front of the wall, and you're hard pressed not to recognize that life is a very fleeting thing. It's such a delicate balance. With just the slightest inch one way or the other, you could be alive or you could be dead. And I've had those experiences many, many times. And many of my friends throughout the years as a youth, as a young man, growing and building businesses through the war experiences, they've been great, great, great brothers to me. And I miss them dearly. Most of them are gone now. Most of them are gone. And but I'm very blessed to be able to tell the story, and hopefully some of the experiences in the story will help others to come through it. We had a group of men at one point who lived on both coasts of the United States, in Europe, and in the Panama Canal Zone, and we would get together by telephone. And we would have a trusting circle, because we had similar experiences and we were at different levels in life that understood that when you make a decision, you impact the lives of many, many people. And, when you're sitting in a room in the ACOA or in an Al-Anon or any of the 12-step program, there are many people there who have gone through the same substance issues, but they don't really understand the depth of responsibility that comes with leadership. And, you make decisions as a leader that are impacted by some of your old scars. You affect possibly thousands of people. So we needed a group of men who understood those things, who could be open and listen and share, and, just be able to say to somebody at one point, that's a lot of crap. You're hiding the truth. you're not paying attention to what's really inside of you. Let's get down beyond.
Did you put this script together formally, or did you just end up together?
Well, it started. It started on on an air flight from San Francisco to New York. I was sitting in first class, and sitting next to me was this man, and he was working on some stuff, and I had finished my work, and he's working, and he finally finished, and he said, "Wow," he said, "now we can talk," and we chatted a little bit. It turned out that he was an instrumental city planner for San Francisco, and he had these responsibilities on water flow and traffic flow and things, all these things. And so at that point, as I mentioned to you once before, I was the CEO of a publicly traded company that I had founded, that was now the conglomerate and the head of 28 companies in 3 countries with thousands and thousands of employees. So he understood the quantity of responsibility that I was experiencing on a daily basis, and we started talking back and forth by phone. And it was good for us. And then he said, I have another friend, he might be able, and then another one. And as it turned out, one of the last ones to join this group was suggested by a doctor friend of mine, a cardiologist who became the head of the Congress of Cardiologists across the nation. I mean, a very prestigious position. He recommended a man who he had met from his experiences supporting the military, and it turned out to be my friend Mace, who was the same one that got me into Berlin. And I knew, it's just a small world. And
yeah, it is a small world. Yeah,
it's a small world.
So what this group does is you bounce ideas off of each other, or
we talk about personal issues we were having. We talk about in some cases the corporate issues that were going on. About sometimes everything looks like it's the right decision, but something in the inner soul says something's bothering me with this. I'm not quite sure what it is. You can't go to your underlings and say this because you're the CEO of the company. You're supposed to have the answers, And so you go to the people who work for you and you say, I'm not too pleased, something's troubling me. Right away they start defending themselves because they're supposed to have shaped this out completely for you. So you don't want to put them at risk emotionally by saying it's a problem. So you talk it out with some other people who have experiences similar to that. And it was very helpful, very helpful. Mm-hmm. And all kinds of people. There was one particular man who you would know his name. I won't mention his name, but he was a rock and roll star as a young man, had 7 gold records, had a drug problem, retired, got cured, got back in, started singing different kinds of music, and became very, very popular again. And he was part of our group. Mm-hmm. This guy was part of our group, and he would talk about issues that he's back on the road again, and he's doing shows, and he's afraid because part of the time when he's alone at night, he gets this temptation to use the drug again, and he doesn't. He'll just pick up the phone and call one of the buddies, that kind of thing, So
yeah, the 12-step thing,
Yeah, 12-step support. Absolutely. Oh, it was very gratifying. I talked of some of that in the book, but not in a lot of detail. But I did talk of some of that in the book, and the book could have so many more stories.
Are you going to do another book since you're saying that you have so many other stories? Or
I'm starting to shape out a book now. It'll be a little different. It won't be quite the same because it won't be this autobiographical appeal to it. It'll have a story that flows and central characters in it. And I know so many characters over the years that could make up the story. It could easily be done. I'm not sure when it'll be ready. I know one thing: it can't take 50 years to do this next one.
But you just turned 79, right?
Turned 79, yes. Just
Just
turned
turned
79.
79. Yeah. Well, or maybe it's in the garage. You need to clean out the garage again.
It's
And
probably in there.
it's probably in the garage. Well, now tell people where they can find your book, Carl.
Okay.
Where
Okay, it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's in Target. It's in any number of places where you can go online and get it. It is called To Every Page a Turning, One Life's Journey. And if you see that picture, that's me sitting there.
That's actually you. Is that on the backyard where you?
No, this is my wife's talent. This is a picture that was taken in. It was actually taken on the Bay of Naples. That's Mount Vesuvius back there, and that's our bougainvillea from our yard over here. So
Oh, okay.
we combined it together.
Oh, okay.
I designed that cover.
Well, it's a book and you have a fascinating story, Carl. You've captured an actual era in America and the world and things happening, and that you've captured all that, and and it's a fascinating story. So, and you're in Florida right now. What's the weather doing there?
Coral Springs, Florida. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Happy to be here.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us for lunch today.
Thank you so
Do you have
much.
a website that people can go visit?
Yes, it's everypageatturning.com.
Everypageatturning.com.
I do have a Facebook site for Carl Buccellato Author, in addition to my personal site. So you can go on Carl Buccellato Author on Facebook and see many of these other stories and other pictures in there. And I thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for lunch, Carl. And the name of the book is To Every Page a Turning, One Life's Journey. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.